Hello guys, thank you for joining the stream today. I know it's a late night one. It's about 10:15
Hello,
here
guys.
Eastern, and I'm just starting the stream. It's just to hang out today, go through and edit, and chat. And I'm gonna show you guys my workflow that I use for editing my images, because I edit through Lightroom and then into Photoshop sometimes. Sometimes I finish based on the image. I finish it all in Lightroom. Sometimes I don't even bother to go to Lightroom at all. I just use Camera Raw to do the edits and then move it into Photoshop, and then I edit that way. But today we just want to share with you guys my workflow and my thought process. So if you're in the chat, let me know how the audio is and how the stream is coming, the quality of the stream. If it's good, give me a thumbs up in the chat. Let me know how it's going. All right, so I hope you all are keeping safe out there. It's a crazy world out there right now with this corona stuff and people in lockdown and quarantine and stuff like that. So I hope you guys are all staying safe, and you're indoors. I hope you are, because we're editing right now. So hope you're indoors as you edit with me. So all right, let's get started. Here's a quick look. Let me just bring up Lightroom. And as you can see, here we go. I have a simple image right here. I shot this image a couple of months ago when I went on a photo walk with the group Get Out and Shoot Toronto group. And at that point, we went to Casa Loma, which is sort of a haunted house here in Toronto, they say. And we went out there for a photo walk as usual, as the group does. And if you're in Toronto area and you don't know about this group, you're missing out. So you must as well check it out. It's a meetup group that meets in places around the city and sometimes outside of the city. And we just go out, a group of photographers, and we shoot and have fun. So this is one of the shots, one of the meetups we did at Casa Loma. We go in there as a group and everybody does their own thing. And then sometimes we do group stuff, but it's just a way to get you out there. So if you're not a member of Get Out and Shoot and you're in Toronto, try out that group, join, and it's a great place to learn. So if you're in the chat, let me know how the audio is going, how the stream is coming along. Let me know how it's coming. All right, so let's get started. This is a basic, simple shot. I shot this with the Sony A7 III at 1/60th of a second, f2.2, ISO 800, using the 50mm f1.8 lens. So this hallway was really dark, and no flash allowed, so no flash in this shot. I try to expose it to the best I can given the scenario. And now we're going to just go through and quickly edit. So let's take this image. Oh, and before we edit, I just want to show you guys a few settings in Lightroom that you might want to be conscious of and change. So because I start my edits in Lightroom or Camera Raw and then take it in Photoshop. You also always want to make sure that when you take that image from Lightroom to Photoshop, you're retaining most of the color details and most of the data as much as possible when it goes into Photoshop, because you're basically exporting a copy of that image into Photoshop. You're going to edit it and maybe bring it back into Lightroom to export the final version. So you want to make sure that when you go into Lightroom, go check your preferences, and in your Lightroom preferences, go to the external editing tab. And one of the things you want to make sure is that your file format, you can choose what you want, whether you want a PSD or you want a TIFF, but I always leave mine on a TIFF. Prophoto RGB is a good color to leave, but the most important thing is to make sure that the bit depth is 16-bit right here. So when you take it into Photoshop, you have a lot of color data to work with. If I think by default it comes set at 8-bit, so you want to make sure that you change that from 8-bit to 16-bit. So when you export your photos or you take your photos from Lightroom into Photoshop, you are editing a 16-bit image as opposed to an 8-bit image. All right, so that's basically it for me. What I want to change out here. The other thing that you may want to also check or take a look at, I believe that's in the catalog settings. So let me show you quickly. Where is my catalog settings? Right here. So if you go to catalog settings, one of the things that I always want to make sure is that, so this setting here, automatically write changes in the XMP file, I like to leave it checked. The reason why I do this is because if you don't have this checked, then all your edits are saved built in or baked in into this. The changes you're making are baked into that PNG file or the TIFF file. But if you write this to an XMP file, what it allows is that, for example, if one day you are no longer using Lightroom and you want to edit this in a different editor, chances are that editor will be able to read that XMP file and maintain some of the changes that you've made in this image. So that's why I leave this there. So I'm going to go okay. That's basically my basic setup for Lightroom. And then I'm going to now start editing. So let's head over to the develop tab and start doing some edits on this image. So here we are in the develop tab. As you can see my histogram, there's a little bit of highlights blown out here. We're going to take a look. I have edited this once, but I don't remember what exactly I did with it because it's been a while back. So I'm just going to go through this and we're going to basically just stick to it and do new stuff, right? So whatever comes out, it's something that we all editing together, and we're gonna just have fun with it. All right, guys, let me know in the comment how the audio is coming, how the stream is coming. If you can still hear me good, if the stream is good, let me know. All right, counting on you guys. All right, so let's keep going. So Lightroom basically is made to be edited in top-down approach. But don't get me wrong, I don't really follow that. I do what I think it's good for the image. So you might start off from here, fix your your white balance and stuff. Sometimes you work differently. So for this image, I'm gonna play around with the white balance a little bit and see. But it's not final because I will come back to it if I need to and make some adjustments as I edit. And for this, I think I'm gonna leave it right somewhere here for now, around 3400 or 3450. For now, I cool it down a little bit. And I want to take my exposure and leave it. I'm not really going to do much with the exposure right now. I'll come back to that later. But I'm going to take my highlights and bring it down a little bit just to get rid of some of that blown out highlights and recover some of the details in there. I'm going to take my shadows and push this up a little bit. I'm going to take my blacks, and for the blacks, what I do is hold down the Alt key, right, while shifting, and bring that blacks in a little bit to where you see that you're getting some color artifacts in your white. So that's gone, and I bring it in, and sometimes you can go a little deeper just to make the blacks pop. That's what I've done with this. So that's simple edits here and there. For this image, I'm going to take my clarity up a little bit, maybe around 10. My vibrance, I'm going to push it, bring in the color tones a little bit, maybe around 12. If it's a portrait where the subject is more dominant, I really don't play much with my clarity. But this is not, a high-end portrait retouching exercise, so I'm just going to leave it and play around as we go. So now I'm going to take my saturation and I'm going to leave the saturation maybe at -2. I'm not going to touch the colors and stuff because we'll work on those as stuff later on. I'm going to take my tone curve and I'm going to just do a quick S curve on this tone curve, small, tiny adjustments here, and just fine tune it to taste. And one thing I like to do is fade the blacks a little bit. Right, so that's the changes we made with the tone curve right there, right, on and off. Now the next thing I want to do, go down to the details tab, and see what we want to do with the details. So basically, before I touch the details, I can see that this is not straight. So I want to do a little bit of transform. And let's try the auto level and see. And as you can see, that did not do, well, I think it might, well, it did not do such a great job. So I'm going to try vertical transform, and the vertical transform seems to level it up a little bit more better. So I'll leave with the vertical transform on, but I'll show you guys also how to do a transform manually in case the vertical transform doesn't work for you. So if the vertical transform doesn't work for you, then what you can do is do a manual transform. So to do a manual transform, take the guided upright tool, select and draw a line across something in the image that you know it's supposed to be straight, right? So I would say that one. Maybe I'll draw another one right here, right? And you can see it kind of did a good job straightening out those two pillars. And if you want to add on a vertical as well, you can also do a vertical right there. And yeah, it seems to have adjusted the image and fixed the alignments a little bit more better. So I'll leave it that for now. And I want to take out this blue or green bar there. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a crop and bring my crop in to take that out. Right. And let's see. Right, let's see. Right here, I think I like this crop better. So I'll just stay with that for now. Okay, so now that we've done all of this, I'm gonna go back to the details tab, and I want to add a little bit of sharpening to this image. So to do the sharpening piece, what I start off with my mask, and what I do is hold down the shift key, the alt key, hold down the alt key and drag your mask to the right. And what I want to see is that, so when you have everything white, it means that whatever sharpening you do is affecting the entire image. So the mask allows you to be able to restrict where in the image that sharpening is. So as I drag it, the places that are turning black, the sharpening will not affect. And then the places that are white is where the sharpening is going to affect. So most of the time you just want the sharpening to just affect the outlines of the image. And so maybe somewhere around here I'll take for this image. And then with that done, I will play with the amount. But to do that, I'm going to kind of zoom in here so I can see how much of the sharpening effect is happening. And you can see if I bring it all the way, you can see how much sharpening is affected. And I'm going to bring this down, maybe leave it around somewhere around 77. The radius and the detail I'll leave the same, right? And maybe I'm going to do a little bit of color noise reduction. This was shot at ISO 800, which is not really that bad, but I'm just going to do maybe 3 on the luminance or 4 on the luminance noise reduction. And that's good. So I'm going to go over now and take a look at my lens correction. So the lens correction, as you can see, I had it auto set to auto lens correction. And what this does is it corrects the vignetting and maybe the distortion on the lens. Sometimes I like it. Sometimes I want to take out that vignetting. Sometimes I want to leave it in there. If you want to leave the vignetting in there, then just don't turn on lens profile correction. Sometimes too, I go in and do it manually. So the manual way is to take the vignetting and maybe I can correct it as much as I want or not at all, right? So I can take the vignetting and just leave it or just correct it. So, or correct it. So I'm just gonna leave this. In this case, I just want that vignette to be there. If you have distortion, you can use this here to manually correct that distortion. All right. If you want to. So for this image, I'm gonna leave it right there, or maybe just not do it at all. And when you come in here, chromatic aberration, if I zoom in, you can see all this purple halo around him. That's just the chromatic aberration, and this is basically caused by when you have, come on, like the light intensity coming in and the contrast base. It's kind of do some sort of, well, this is not a thing. So, but that's basically the lens causing that aberration. The way the lens is taking effect, the contrast with the backlit situation, that's what's causing this chromatic aberration, which shows up at this purple fringing happening around him. So I can turn this on, but as you can see, it's not working. So we can go into the manual tab, and I can take this eyedropper tool, come in here and select the purple fringe around him. And as you can see, that automatically corrects for some of those aberrations. Sometimes when you do this, you got to check through the image, because sometimes it takes away some colors from, especially if you have purple in the image, it could take away from that purple color in that image. So you don't want to go all the way out. You want to take a look, and if you need to, you can adjust the hue of that aberration in here. All right, so with this basic stuff done, I'm gonna leave this calibration tab for now. I use that calibration tab to do my color grading most of the time, and you can also do some of the color grading with the HSL. But I want to show you how I work with certain images. I don't do this for all images, but certain images I want to take it into Photoshop and finish off the edit. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click this image, and I'm going to go edit in and choose Photoshop. And this is going to launch Photoshop and then take us into the image into Photoshop. So here we are with the image in Photoshop opened. And the first thing I always do when I come into Photoshop is to duplicate my layer. So Control J to do a duplicate of that image, and then I can start working on this. So right here, and then I want to take a look, and basically sometimes I do a quick check of my white balance, and the way I do it is to go in here, add on a curves layer, and inside the curves layer, instead of manually adjusting the curve, I take a look and I go through and I do auto options. And in the curves auto options dialog box, I play around with these two to see which one works the best. So enhance brightness and contrast, maybe not for this image because I don't want to do that, but I want to see find dark and light colors. And what this does is to be able to fix your white balance sometimes. So if you think your white balance is off, or you think you have a color cast in the image, this can help reduce that color cast on that image, and also help adjust the color balance a lot. So that's good. And we can see what the effect this one has by just turning off this layer. All right. So we went from that to that. It has also boosted up the contrast in the image a little bit more. And that's good. You could do this manually in Lightroom if you want, but I think it's easier for me if I do it in Photoshop. Now, the next thing I want to do with this image is do a little bit of color grade. I want to bring up the guy in the middle a little bit more so we can see him. In my original edit, I did not do that, but in this edit, I want to do something different. So I'm going to bring out this guy a little bit more. And the way I'm going to do that is use another curves adjustment layer. And in this curves layer, I'm going to bump out the curve a little bit, maybe that way. And then what I'm going to do is click on the mask here and do Control I to invert that mask. And I want to make a selection on this mask. So I'm going to take the selection tool, the elliptical marquee tool, and what I want to do is feather it. So I'm going to give it a feather of about 50 pixels. And with that, I'm going to make a selection around the guy in here. Right, and you can move your selection by just holding down the space button. And let's see how this works. If this doesn't work, then we may just ditch it and do this in Lightroom, because it's actually easier to be done in Lightroom. And what I'm going to do with this is take my brush tool and I'm going to paint within this selection here. I guess the selection is really not necessary, but I just do that to keep myself constrained. So if I go outside of this selection, it doesn't affect it. But I'm just going to paint in here with the white brush. If your color here palette is not black and white, what you can do is use the D key to put it to default. And then if you want to switch between black and white, you can use the X key on your keyboard to toggle between the foreground and the background color. And then, for example, let's say I have red or any other color selected here. What I can do is just press the D key to reset the color palette. All right, so now I'm going to paint with white. And as you can see, as I paint, I'm only affecting within that selection. And because I have that radio selection, this marquee selection going on here, if I go outside of that selection, nothing really happens, right? So that's the good thing about using the selection, and you can make that selection as tight as you want if need be, right? So if I hold on the Alt key and click on the mask, you can see that this is the area within which we've painted. And this may be too much because, as we know, the guy is only in the middle there, but for this particular image, it doesn't really matter because where he is kind of lighting up a little bit, so you can't really tell that I've done this. But what you can also do is now take this mask here and you can feather the mask, right? So you can, as you can see, as I move the feather, right, it's feathering that painting job that we just did. Right, so I'm just gonna feather that mask a little bit more so it makes the effect gradual. So it starts off and goes gradually. So now that we've done that, you can come back in here and you can play with your curve a little bit more. Right, make it brighter, make it darker, and adjust to taste. Turn it off, bring it on, before and after. And if you want to, or you feel that this effect is too much for you, you can just dial it down a little bit right there. Okay, and then another trick I use as well, let me just deselect, get out of this selection. Control Z. Let's just close this property box. And I want to do Control D just to deselect. The other thing I do with something of this nature, the curve piece, it's to, if you double click on this right hand side, you get these options dialog box. And right here, I sometimes use this blend if section to make adjustments to the image. So on this blend if line, you have, this is your underlying layer, right? And this is the current layer, which is this layer, the selected layer. But what I want to do is blend this selection so that in the brighter parts of the underlying layer, the effect does not take place. So to take away that effect from the brighter area. So how you do that is to take this and drag it to the left. So you can see as I drag it, that effect is being taken away from the highlights in that area, right? and you can see that you have some discoloration, or it seems like some jaggedness happening. To get rid of that jaggedness, what you can do is hold down the Alt key, and you can break this slider into two, right? And this end now acts like a feather. Right, so the further apart that these are, the more feathering that is applied to the whole effect. And you can preview what we just did right here. So you can see how much of the effect is removed from the window area and on the floor here as well. Right, so that's how I do it. And I'm going to leave that. Now the next thing is I want to do a little bit of a color grade. And to do that color grade, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do what we call a stamp visible layer. So Control Alt Shift and E will create a stamp layer with all the changes that we have done so far on that layer. And what I'm now going to do is take that layer, I'm going to go up to Filter, and I'm going to go to Camera Raw Filter. And this brings you back into Camera Raw, which essentially is another version of Lightroom. And what I'm going to do here is go down into the calibration tab, and I'm going to make some adjustments to this color grade, right? I'm going to change a little bit of the color and shift them around. So I'm going to take the primary greens and I'm going to bring them down to maybe somewhere around here for now. We're going to play around with this for a little bit and see what we can come up with. And I'll take the reds, and for this image I want to bring the reds down a little bit into the hue. I'm just adjusting the hue right now. I'm going to bring the hue of the reds down, and I'm going to go back, reset the primary greens. I just want to take the blues and play with the blues a little bit. And then I can play with the greens to try to kind of balance out everything. Can play with the saturation of the colors a little bit as well. And the reds, bring down the saturation a little bit. And for this edit, I'll just leave this as it is because we're just doing some quick edits. We're not really going through a full edit here. So I'll go OK, and this will bring that image back into Photoshop. And if I turn off this layer and turn it back on, this is the change that we just did with the Camera Raw filter, right? Before and after. All right, so I mean, for this image, I think I'm good with where we brought it to. And you can just take a look. This is where we were when we brought it into Photoshop, and this is where we at right now. Right. If you want to add a little bit more of contrast, then you can just add another curves layer and just bring down the blacks. All right. Fade out the blacks a little bit. Gonna fade out my highlights a little bit as well. Right, and that's what we've done with the curves. And I'm good with this. So that's how I edit, and I do my basic edits and take my images from Photoshop to Lightroom and back. So now that we have done with this edit that we just did, if I want to get back into Lightroom, then all I have to do is just close this window, and then you get this dialog box that says, do you want to save? And I'm going to go yes. So Photoshop is going to close, finish the edit. I'm going to minimize Photoshop. I'm now back in Lightroom. And as you can see, the image automatically is exported back into Lightroom. So this is the original image before we went into Lightroom, and this is what we did with this is the original image before we went into Photoshop. This is the image we came out of Lightroom with. And if you want to see your before and after, let's take a look. This is our before we started editing, and now this is what we have after all the edits we've done this evening. So guys, that's it for today. I just wanted to hang out quickly and share with you guys this basic workflow process that I use. This is not by any means the best of edits, but it's just to walk you guys through my thought process as I edit. And we're going to be having a couple more of these edit with me sessions, hopefully. And I will always provide you guys with my raw image, and you can edit the image. And let me share with me what you come up with. So the link to the raw image is in the description. Download it, go ahead, edit it, play with it. Share with me, tag me on Instagram at ebuff46, and then link up. Let me see what you came up with from this edit session. All right, guys, thank you for watching. And as usual, stay blessed, and I will see you again soon.